You know, when people think about potatoes, and we're here at the Eye, live on the show floor at the Potato Expo here in Austin, Texas, when people think about potatoes, and we've talked a lot about soil health and fertilizer and growing, they don't think as much about technology. We did touch on it a little bit yesterday with John Deere, with drones and tractors, but artificial intelligence, even that little device that you might have at home, called Alexa, is really changing the world. And Simcha Shore is with us now. That's going to talk about AI, what the impact is on farming in general, and specifically on potatoes. So welcome to the Eye.
Well, thank you for having me. Artificial intelligence and robotics are a tremendous revolution, like you said, all around us. We see from the autonomous car to buying online and getting all kinds of things like that around us. AI is revolutionizing everything around us. And more we're seeing it in agriculture. So the simple cases are more of using robots in a greenhouse to detect tomatoes and pick them and things like that.
Yeah, and even picking them. I've seen some of the robotics, that look like a hand that can pick something very gently and so on. Yeah.
And in the case of potatoes, we had to use something called deep learning, which we had to train the algorithm with thousands of images that we collected around the world of problems in potatoes, early blight, late blight, other problems. And we collect these images with small commercial drones that we just fly over the field. So anyone can do it. They don't need us. And the software is up and the algorithms are up in the cloud. So we're bringing the best agronomy, the best scouting to every plant. So moving from a statistical kind of scouting and statistical treatment, we'll see in the next few years where we can move to a plant level scouting and a plant level treatment, which can allow us to increase the yield, which we really need to do because we're going to have another 2 billion people to feed in this 20 years. And I think the potato world is one of the major factors that'll play in that game of doubling its yield in the next 20 years.
Sure, and I think from a health standpoint, a plant-based standpoint, as well as the affordability of food, I agree with you. I think potatoes are there. So when you say plant-based, I mean, and I'm going to assume something, correct me if I'm wrong, with the imagery, with the drones, you can find a single plant and say what's right or wrong with that.
Yes, so the drone, we can fly the drone around the whole day. It's a small commercial drone. Yeah. But we worked with a lot of agronomists and scouts here in North America in potatoes, and they spend about 20, 30 minutes in a field. They don't have much more than that. So we just try to keep that time. So we'll do 100, 125 acres in the same 20 minutes. So we'll get thousands of pictures in that time because the drone is taking images all the time.
Right.
And in each picture, there's like 10 plants. So we get 50, 60,000 plants.
And then you could zoom in on it.
And we can zoom in. We don't have to. The computer can zoom into each leaf and do that simple process that an agronomist would do and just show him where he has the problems. So today, unfortunately, we find something in the corner of the field, we'll spray the entire field, which is not, it's like giving everyone here in the room antibiotics because I have a fever. That's what we're doing today. So through artificial intelligence, we can improve that process. We can help the scouts scout better and more and have them out in the field as much as they need to be, because I haven't met a scout that has enough time to scout as much as he wants. So now he can get the entire field, go back to the office. He still goes out to the field. Some things you need to take out of the ground. But then he'll just get out of those millions of images, he'll just get those specific leaves that have a problem. And I see I saw the pivot companies, they now can control the single, the single one that's coming down from the pivot, the nozzle.
Okay.
The nozzle, and they can give water, fertilizer, and pesticides through that, but they don't have the intelligence for a single almost a simple plant. So it's one nozzle coming down. So with this kind of technology, we can feed that pivot precisely where to give more water, pesticides, and fertilizer.
So a couple things. Number one, from a labor standpoint, forget quality because that's clear. But from a labor standpoint, if you had to have human beings scout the entire field, what you're saying you could do in 20 or 30 minutes, how long would it take people to do that?
It takes some hours. For just take like a 100-acre pivot, a big pivot. If he would actually walk the entire field, it would take him hours and hours to do that.
Right.
It's not, no one has that kind of time. They
Right.
spend maybe 20
And
minutes
also
in the
they get
field.
tired.
Yeah, so
And they're in the field, and maybe you're not looking as bright as you should.
and it might be the optimal time in the day to get imagery might be 20 minutes in the afternoon. He's walking the field from 7 in the morning to 7 in the evening. He gets
Excellent
tired,
point.
he might have rain,
Yeah.
but if he has like a window of 20 minutes even, he can have the entire field, go back to the office. He doesn't even have to go to that field every day.
Right.
He has 100 fields. He can have someone, eventually we want to have boxes in the field on the pivot, and that drone comes out like a bee, flies around, and he sees all the images in the office. And when he sees a problem field, he'll go out and scout that field and see what he should be doing there.
And let's talk about money.
Money.
When you have what I'm going to call early detection or earlier detection,
Sorry.
what kind of savings, what kind of difference does that make for a farmer?
So I think the most obvious one is we can cut scouting expenses by 50%, because the same scout can now cover double the amount of fields. So he'll still go out to the field, but instead of walking around for as many time, we'll just fly the drone about a bit. So, and he can get out to more fields. So it's 50% of scouting. But I think the better and the more valuable thing is, one, a better use of chemicals. And I see it in the near future even going to a more plant-based treatment. If I only found the disease in the corner of the field, why should I do the entire field?
Right.
I can come by the next day and do another scouting with the
Both
drone.
from a cost as well as from the pressure from consumers
To use
and
less.
retailers
Yes.
to use less.
Yes, and I think at the end of the day, since we start the field in the beginning of the season with a certain amount of plants, and we just lose them along the way,
Right.
if we do early detection like in people, we can do better treatment and end the season with more yield. That's where the real money is for the grower.
And I know it's hard to put a number to it
Yes.
or a percent. Just, do you think that the grower is going to do 10% better, 20% better?
So I'd say anywhere between 5 to 15% better. Definitely 50% in scouting.
Yep.
Maybe the chemical companies doing that,
Right.
and spending less money on chemicals, obviously, and hopefully growing at least 10% more in yield.
Which is significant.
Definitely significant for the growers. And this coming season, we'll be working with growers in Idaho and Washington to prove that. So we're going to do a full season like we're doing now in Israel, because we grow twice a year. Mm-hmm. So we have a few hundred acres that we're doing a full season, and we're doing it with outsourcing companies that do tests. So at the end of the season, they can tell us in numbers how much we saved in scouting and chemicals and how much we increased the yield.
Well, I look forward to seeing you here at the Potato Expo next year and finding out what happened in your test here in the U.S.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for joining
Thank you.
us. Going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about how anyone can start the tracking process with an inexpensive product with data logging. Stay tuned.